The funny thing about respect is you never really notice when you don't have it until you do. I'd built a company from the ground up. No handouts. No legacy wealth. Just long hours, stubborn grit, and a system that cut irrigation costs in half for small and mid-sized farms. We'd made the Forbes Future 50. I'd been asked to speak at the AgTech Summit in Des Moines. Clients from 6 states were on our waitlist. But none of that mattered the day I pulled into my family's farm and got told to park out back by the machinery. Guests are up front, my brother said, nodding toward the barn like I was late for a shift. I sat in my truck for a second, staring at the silo I used to climb as a kid. I'd taken a red-eye flight and driven 2 hours just to be here for Dad's 60th. Not because I thought he'd appreciate it, but because some dumb part of me still thought showing up counted for something. I got out, dusted off my jacket, and walked through the gravel toward the back entrance like some hired hand. The main tent was already packed. I didn't see my name at the table with the family. Instead, there was a spot for me by the back, next to the DJ and the potato salad. No one made eye contact. No one said my name. I wasn't surprised. This was the same family that once told me real men don't work behind computers. The same father who said farming was about dirt under your nails, not algorithms. But I still showed up, like I always did. And when I called Rachel just to have a friendly voice in the chaos, she didn't even answer. Later, when I did hear from her, it was just a text. Don't let them get to you. You chose this. It stung more than I wanted to admit. Not just because she was right, but because the tone wasn't comfort. It was contempt. And the truth is, I hadn't chosen this. I chose to build something. And all I ever wanted was for someone, anyone, to see that. That night, someone did. But not the person I expected. And what came after? That changed everything. The reception tent smelled like diesel and sheet cake. Some guy in overalls asked me if I could grab more cups from the supply bin. I didn't correct him. I just nodded and kept walking. That's how it was out here. You leave home, build a life, succeed by every metric that matters, and somehow you come back and get mistaken for a farmhand. I found my seat, folding chair, unstable, half a table behind the main one. My nephews were seated up front. Even my cousin Greg, who once spent 6 months selling bootleg parts online, had a spot next to Dad. But me, the son who put this family name in AgTech Digest, stuck behind a stack of folding chairs and a kid playing Candy Crush with the volume up. I looked around. No photos of me on the memory board. No mention in the welcome speech. Dad's buddy Hank got more airtime than I did, and Hank once accidentally set our hayfield on fire trying to kill a wasp nest. Halfway through dinner, one of the guests leaned over and asked, "So, do you work the land full-time or just seasonal?" I smiled politely. "I run Harmon Systems, the irrigation platform." He blinked. "Is that like a fertilizer thing?" My wife Rachel would have laughed. The tight, condescending kind. She always said the best way to handle these moments was to smile and move on. But Rachel wasn't here. She'd stayed back in Chicago, citing too much on her calendar. Truth was, she never had time for my family or my company. She once called it coding with corn. She thought it was a phase. Said I should have joined her dad's financial firm when I had the chance. But I didn't build Harmon Systems for prestige or cocktail party applause. I built it for every farmer who had to watch their crops burn under a failing system. I built it because the land we grew up on deserved better. Not that anyone here saw it that way. But then a new voice boomed through the tent. "Is Lucas Harmon here?" The chatter died down. Heads turned. I stood slowly. A tall man in a tailored jacket walked in, shaking hands as he passed tables. "I've been hoping to meet you," he said with a wide grin. "I'm Dennis Klein, Regional Director, State Ag Bank. And let me tell you folks, this man right here is changing the game." For the first time all night, you could hear a pin drop. Dennis Klein had the voice of a man who was used to speaking and being listened to. Loud, clear, confident, like a Sunday preacher with a PowerPoint. And when he said my name, heads turned like I just walked in with a marching band. "Lucas Harmon," he said again, clapping me on the back like we were old friends. "You all should be proud of this man. His company, Harmon Systems, just signed a regional deal that's going to make water management affordable for over 200 family-owned farms, including a few right around here." Murmurs spread across the tables like a wildfire. Harmon Systems? Did he say our Lucas? I thought he was doing something with apps. Dennis smiled like he knew exactly what he was doing. He's not just some local success story, folks. He was on the cover of Forbes Midwest last quarter. I've got the article bookmarked. And let me tell you, our office is rolling out incentives for farms that partner with his system. That's how confident we are in what he's built. Suddenly the same people who hadn't looked at me all night were sitting up straighter. Chairs shuffled. Forks hit plates. My brother, who'd made me park in the back, was now squinting like he'd just noticed me for the first time in 15 years. And my father, he didn't say a word, didn't smile, didn't nod, just stared at his coffee cup like it held answers. Dennis turned back to me. I was hoping we could chat after dinner. I've got some folks in from Iowa who want to meet you. I nodded. Happy to. As he moved off to greet the mayor, I sat down slowly, the noise of the tent creeping back in around me. Across the table, one of Dad's friends leaned over and asked, "So what's it called again?" "Your company." "Harmon Systems," I repeated. The old man smiled. Sounds like something big, but I wasn't listening to him. I was watching my father, the man who had spent a lifetime telling me to work with my hands. Couldn't even say the name of what I built with them. And that silence, that said everything. By the time dessert was served, the entire mood had flipped. The same folks who'd asked if I was the valet were now lining up to shake my hand. One guy even asked if I'd take a look at his pump control system, right there between bites of pie. Another handed me a business card like we were at a trade show. And still, my father hadn't moved. He stayed seated, nodding politely, offering the occasional "glad you made it out here," like I was a second cousin, not his son. I'd always thought that if I ever made something of myself, really made it, the recognition would finally come. But the truth is, there's no achievement impressive enough for someone who's already decided you're nothing. After the cake cutting, I stepped outside to catch my breath. The wind carried that dry, late summer smell, dirt, diesel, and dusted hay. I used to love that smell. Now it felt like a place I didn't belong anymore. My phone buzzed. "Rachel." I answered, expecting some version of "how'd it go?" Instead, I heard laughter. Not warm laughter. Not the kind we used to share over cheap wine and impossible dreams. This was sharper, meaner. "Oh, come on, Katie," she was saying, clearly unaware she was off mute. "He's probably standing next to a grain bucket thinking he just cured cancer. They worship anyone with a logo out there." A pause. Then, "No, I didn't go. Why would I? It's not like his family ever took me seriously either. Let him have his little hero moment." I didn't say a word. Didn't hang up. Just listened to my wife of 8 years mock my life's work like it was some novelty side gig. She'd always been the polished one, MBA, private school, second-generation country club member. When we got together, she called me her wild card, said I brought balance. What she meant was, I came from dirt, and she liked the way that looked next to her shine. I hung up without a word, and for the first time all day, the humiliation didn't come from my father. It came from the one person who was supposed to believe in me, when no one else did. I looked out at the fields, my fields, and I knew, right then, something had changed. It wasn't about earning respect anymore. It was about reclaiming it. I sat on the edge of a hay bale behind the barn, watching the lights flicker from the party tent like some distant world I used to live in. I didn't feel like going back in, not to shake more hands, not to pretend like tonight meant something it didn't. For most of my life, I thought respect came on a silver platter once you hit your goals, like some delayed reward for putting in the work. Turns out, it's more like water in dry soil. It only shows up where it's allowed to soak in. Rachel didn't believe in what I was building. That much had become clear. Not in the beginning when I was working nights and burning through savings. Not when I landed our first regional contract. And definitely not now, when she was joking about it behind my back to a friend I'd never liked. I played that call over in my head. The way she said hero moment, like I was a child dressed up in his father's jacket. This wasn't about the business anymore. This was about never being enough. For her, for my family, for the people I thought were in my corner. The barn door creaked behind me. I turned, expecting my brother. But it was Dad. He didn't say anything right away. Just stood there, hands in his pockets, rocking on his heels like he wasn't sure if he should be here. I waited. Finally, he cleared his throat. "They sure seemed impressed," he said. Not a question, not a compliment, just a statement like he was reading a headline he didn't believe. "Yeah," I said dry. "We've done okay." He nodded slowly, looking off at the fields. Your brother says your system's complicated. It's not, I said. It's just smarter than hoses and prayer. That landed harder than I meant it to, but I didn't take it back. He looked at me. So, is it true? You're really on Forbes. I almost laughed. Yeah. Page 32. Under the people who didn't need their father's permission. We stood there in silence. Not angry. Not warm. Just two men staring at the same land and seeing different things. He didn't ask about my company. Didn't say the name. Just kicked the dirt with his boot and said, You heading out? Yeah, I said, rising. Before the cake. You're not staying? He asked, surprised like I'd ruined something. No, I said, walking past him. I already got what I came for. It wasn't admiration. It wasn't forgiveness. It was clarity. The air felt heavier than it should have for a summer night. Maybe it was the humidity. Maybe it was 16 years of trying to earn something that was never on offer. I didn't say goodbye when I left. Not to my brothers. Not to the cousins who suddenly had questions about water sensors. And definitely not to my father who'd gone back inside without another word. I drove slow, the kind of slow that comes when your mind is louder than the engine. Rachel didn't text. I didn't expect her to. Back at the hotel, I stared at the ceiling like it owed me answers. The truth sat beside me like a quiet, uninvited guest. It wasn't just that my father couldn't see what I'd built. It was that Rachel wouldn't. That's what got me. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped asking for his approval. But I never stopped hoping for hers. I pulled out my laptop and opened a folder labeled Investor Decks. Not for work. Just instinct. When you spend enough time building something from nothing, work becomes the one place no one can rewrite your worth. That's when I saw it, an old saved draft of our wedding speech. Mine. Back when I believed this partnership was built on shared ambition. Back when Rachel used to say, we're building our legacy. Legacy. Now she couldn't even say the word farm without a smirk. That night I didn't sleep. Didn't need to. Because somewhere between my father's silence and my wife's laughter, something inside me hardened, not bitter, not angry. Just done. Done pretending like I was lucky to be tolerated. Done begging for seats at tables I built. Done explaining why passion doesn't need pedigree. The next morning, I did what I should have done 10 years ago. I turned the truck around. Not to make peace. Not to mend fences. But to say what needed saying once and finally. The gravel crunched under my tires the way it always had, but this time it didn't sound like home. It sounded like closure. No tent. No banners. No party music. Just the sun climbing over the cornfields like nothing had happened. I pulled up to the main house, not the barn. Parked in the circle drive, bold as brass. Walked right up to the front door like I'd been invited because whether they liked it or not, I was family. Mom answered. She looked surprised. Tired too. But in that way a person gets when they've watched the same fight play out for too many years without being allowed to pick a side. I wasn't expecting you, she said gently. I know, I replied. But I need to say something. Not yell. Not argue. Just say it. She nodded. Come in. The living room looked the same. Same lace doilies, same wall photos. Except, I noticed something new this time. A thin corkboard leaned against the fireplace. Not meant to be seen. Probably forgotten in the shuffle. On it, printouts of every article I'd ever been in. A copy of the Forbes page, a quote from the AgBank conference, a clipping from the local paper calling me a visionary. I turned to her. You kept all this? She looked embarrassed. I've been following everything you've done. I just didn't know how to bring it up around your father. Or Rachel. I sat down, not knowing what to say. Then my brothers came into the room. James, the older one, cleared his throat like he'd practiced this. Look, yesterday got weird. We didn't know the bank guy was coming. We didn't know who you'd turned into. I didn't turn into anyone, I said. You just stopped looking. He winced. You're not wrong. Even Mark, the one who made me park by the grain silos, spoke. We thought maybe if we ignored it, it'd go away. The success. The spotlight. We didn't want to feel small. That was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever get from either of them. And honestly, it was enough. Because for the first time in decades, we weren't pretending. We were talking. And in this house, that was a revolution. I was halfway through a sentence about one of our newest clients when the door creaked open behind me. It was Dad. No jacket. Work boots on. Looked like he'd been out by the shed or just needed somewhere to go and think. He walked in slowly, like he was stepping into a memory that didn't belong to him anymore. Everyone fell quiet. Even the clock on the wall seemed to pause. He looked at me, not past me this time. Not through me. At me. You came back, he said. Yeah, I replied calm. Had some things to say. He nodded once, took the chair across from me like it wasn't a negotiation. I didn't rehearse what came next. I just spoke. I know I made choices you never understood. I didn't take over the farm. I didn't stay put. But I didn't leave to prove anything. I left to build something. Something I could be proud of. He didn't interrupt. I spent years trying to get your approval, and I'm not asking for it now. But I won't keep pretending it doesn't matter when you won't even say the name of what I built. He rubbed his hands together, looking down at the floor like it held answers. Finally, he spoke. I didn't know how to talk to you after you left, he said. You were doing things I didn't understand, talking to people I couldn't reach. Felt like you didn't need us anymore. I blinked. That was the closest thing to vulnerability I'd ever seen in him. You think I didn't need you? I asked. I needed you to see me. That's all I ever needed. He looked up. Harmon Systems, he said, the words clunky on his tongue. That's the name, right? I exhaled. Yeah, that's the name. And for the first time in my life, he didn't change the subject. Didn't look away. He just sat there listening. Not to the numbers, not to the awards, but to me. And somehow that did more than any apology ever could. We didn't hug. That's not who we are. But after years of blank stares and quiet judgment, the fact that my father sat there, saying the name of my company out loud like it mattered, meant more than any birthday toast ever could. I stood to leave, thinking that was the end of it. Closure. Quiet. Done. But as I reached for my keys, Mom stopped me. There's one more thing, she said softly, reaching into the drawer beneath the china cabinet. She pulled out a thin stack of envelopes bound by a faded blue ribbon. What's that? I asked. Letters, she said, from the last few years. Some were articles. Some were invitations. Some were things you mailed us. My heart tightened. I gave them to your father, she continued, not meeting my eyes. But he never opened them. He'd just slide them in here. Said you'd tell us when it mattered. I took the bundle in my hands. The paper was worn in places, softened by time, not touch. She met my gaze finally. I should have opened them, she whispered. I should have asked questions. You still can, I said. I'm not going anywhere. That's when James, my brother, the one who once laughed when I said I was pitching to a venture fund, spoke again. We've been idiots, he said, plain and honest. Jealous idiots. I raised an eyebrow. Jealous? Yeah, he nodded. You did the thing we all thought about but never had the guts for. You left, built something, came back without needing anyone. I looked at him for a long moment. It never felt like that on my side. He nodded, sheepish. That's because we weren't ready to admit it. There it was again, truth. The kind of raw honesty that had been missing from this family since Mom first started putting dinner on the table in silence. And for the first time in a long time, the quiet didn't feel like a wall. Felt like a beginning. I didn't plan to stay long that day. I came back to say what needed to be said, not to linger in memories I'd already outgrown. But when I reached the front porch to leave, I didn't walk straight to the truck. I just stood there. Mom stepped out behind me, holding a mug. You've got time for one cup? I nodded. Sure. We sat in those old wicker chairs, the same ones I'd fixed with Dad when I was 16, back when fixing chairs felt like proving your worth. She sipped her coffee, eyes scanning the fields. You know, she said slowly, your father used to come out here at night, sit right in that chair and read the articles about you, after I'd gone to bed. Thought I didn't know. I turned to look at her. Then why didn't he say anything? Because pride and regret are hard to untangle, she said, especially for men like him. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. A few minutes later, Mark came out too. Awkward, carrying an old irrigation catalog in one hand. You ever think about installing some of your systems here? He asked, not looking at me. I raised an eyebrow. Here? On the family farm? He shrugged. We're wasting money every summer. Might be time to stop pretending you don't know what you're doing. It wasn't an apology, but it was the first time anyone had acknowledged that my knowledge was worth something to them. We talked for an hour. Real talk. Logistics, runoff, sensor placement, crop yield maps. It felt like business, familiar ground I didn't have to fight to stand on. When I finally got back in the truck, the sun was beginning to dip low. As I pulled out of the drive, Dad stepped onto the porch. Just stood there, hands in his pockets. He didn't wave. But he nodded. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't surrender. It was recognition. And for me, that was enough. It was a Tuesday. Ordinary. Quiet. I was in my office reviewing drone mapping data for a client in Missouri when my phone buzzed. Dad's cell? I stared at the screen like it had to be a mistake. He never called. When I picked up, his voice was clipped like it took effort just to start. Lucas. Got a question about our south plot. The irrigation's all wrong. I sat up straighter. What's happening? Sensors are useless. Everything's either too dry or drowned. We're wasting water we can't afford to waste. I waited curious. Then he added, quieter, your brother said maybe we should talk to you. Now that was something. I logged into our platform and pulled up the satellite data for their area. Yeah, I see it, I said. You've got a drainage slope near the corn rows. Water's pulling west. Your runoff's stealing from your soy. He was quiet. Then, can you fix it? I can optimize it, I replied. But I'll need full access to the plots. And someone who's actually willing to run the system right. Another beat of silence. You send me what I need to do, he said. We'll follow it. Just like that. No sarcasm. No comments about fancy computer gadgets. Just a man asking for help from the son he used to pretend wasn't there. By the following week, Harmon Systems was officially contracted by the Harmon family farm. They didn't get a discount. They didn't ask for one. They signed the same contract as every other client. And when I visited that month to install the updates, something had changed. This time, I didn't park by the machinery. This time, the front gate was open. For me. The envelope was cream-colored, thick paper, my name written in familiar handwriting. No group text. No guilt-tripping email. Just a simple card in the mail. Thanksgiving. Your seat's at the table. Hope you'll come. Signed, Mom and Dad. I stared at it for a long time, not because I didn't know what to do, but because for once I wasn't being asked as a footnote or a formality. I was being welcomed. I showed up that Thursday with a bottle of wine under one arm and a USB drive full of system updates in my pocket because old habits die hard. The front door opened before I even reached the porch. Mark greeted me with a grin and a one-armed hug. Got your usual spot saved. Not next to the speakers this time. James chimed in from the hallway. Dad's been telling the neighbors about your yield reports like he invented them. When I walked into the dining room, I stopped short. There it was. A framed photo on the buffet table, me standing with Dennis Klein, shaking hands in front of a Harmon Systems display. Right next to it, a copy of that Forbes cover laminated. Mom did that, James said quietly behind me. She said it was time. Dinner was loud. Laughter-filled. Real. At one point, Dad clinked his glass just once and everyone quieted down. I want to say something, he began. About Lucas. My chest tightened. I didn't move. He built something this family can be proud of. And we didn't see it soon enough. But that's on us, not him. He looked directly at me. I was wrong, he said simply. And I lost a lot of time because of it. But I want to make up for it before it's too late. The room stayed quiet. Then Mom reached over and put her hand on his. And just like that, the weight of years of silence lifted. Not erased, but acknowledged. And that was enough for now. We didn't talk about the past much after that. Didn't rehash old slights or comb through the things left unsaid. Turns out you don't have to dissect history when everyone at the table is finally sitting at eye level. The farm started using Harmon Systems full-time by December. Dad asked for training videos. Mark requested dashboard access. James even suggested we offer bundled pricing for neighboring properties like he'd been thinking about it for months. And me? I stopped waiting for someone to hand me permission to belong. Because somewhere between that awkward birthday party and that warm Thanksgiving table, I realized something. I didn't need to be invited into a legacy. I'd already built my own. But there was one more conversation I hadn't had yet. And it wasn't with my father. Rachel never followed up after that phone call, the one where she laughed at my life like it was a punchline she'd grown tired of. She texted a few times, casual things like, "Hope the trip went well. Let's talk when you're back." But I never replied. A few weeks later, I sent a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A real letter. I told her I'd heard what she said. That it had landed harder than she could have known, but not for the reasons she thought. It wasn't just the joke. It was the fact that she meant it. That after everything I'd built, she still saw me as the guy playing dress-up in a world she didn't respect. I told her I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was just done performing. And I ended it with the only sentence that mattered. If you can't believe in me now, please stop pretending you ever did. She never wrote back. And that silence? It felt like freedom. The divorce was quiet. No theatrics. No arguments. Just 2 signatures and a polite email from her lawyer. Rachel didn't contest a thing. Didn't ask about the company. Didn't ask about the farm. Didn't ask about me. That was the final confirmation I didn't know I still needed. I'd spent years trying to earn approval from people who'd already made up their minds. And Rachel? She never fell out of love. She just stopped being impressed. Somewhere between the first failed pitch deck and the 5th overnight server crash, she decided I was a man who aimed low. She thought I was chasing a dream. But I wasn't chasing anything. I was building. And builders don't wait for applause. We break ground anyway. That spring, I was asked to give the keynote at the Midwest Agricultural Innovation Conference. Me, a farm kid who used to program irrigation algorithms at 2 a.m. in a basement while Rachel rolled her eyes upstairs. As I stood backstage, checking notes I didn't need, my phone buzzed. Dad, that talk of yours, is it live streamed? Your mother wants to see it. I smiled. When I walked out onto the stage, the crowd stood. Not because of a last name. Not because of some borrowed legacy. But because of something I built with my own 2 hands. That was the moment I stopped needing to prove anything to anyone. Not my wife. Not my brothers. Not even my father. Because finally, I wasn't standing in anyone's shadow. I was standing in my own light. It's strange how betrayal doesn't always look like cheating or screaming matches or broken plates. Sometimes it looks like a slow erosion. 1,000 little dismissals. A partner who smirks instead of supports. A father who asks about the weather but never your work. You learn to adapt. To go quiet. To tell yourself that being tolerated is close enough to being loved. Until one day it's not. Until one day a bank executive calls your name in a crowded room and the world turns to look while the people who should have been proud look down instead. Until one day you hear your wife laugh at your life like it's a bad investment she's already moved past. And in that moment, something in you breaks. Not loudly. Not violently. Just clean. The way a rope finally snaps when it's been stretched too far, too long. That break? It made space. And in that space, I didn't fall apart. I stood up. 6 months later, Harman Systems is expanding into 3 new states. The farm runs smoother than it ever did under guesswork and pride. And my father? He calls every few weeks, not for weather updates, but for insight. Sometimes he even listens. This past Christmas, Mom handed me a gift wrapped in old blueprints I recognized, one of my first prototypes. Inside was a framed photo. Me standing in the field, boot deep in dirt, shaking hands with the farmer who gave me my first contract. My father took the picture. She wrote that on the back. I stood there for a long time holding it, because for the first time in years, I felt seen. Not as a son, not as a brother, not as a husband, but as me. And that was the revenge I never had to plan. Just the kind you earn.